Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be discussing the nature of human life and why force stifles human life. So yeah, let's jump right into it, not to waste any time. So to begin with, let us talk about what is the nature of human life. What does it mean, or what is the nature of life in general? Before we even jump to human life, let's talk about what is the nature of life in general. What does it mean to be alive as distinct from being dead or being an inanimate object? We notice that there's this distinction here. That there's these type of organisms that live, and there's these type of organisms that are dead, or that are inanimate. So what is the difference here? How do we distinguish between these two? Well, Rand defines in the Objectivist Ethics, she says that life is self-generated, self-sustaining action. And a very important word here is the word action, because life is a type of action. And that's going to become very fundamental as we go forward here in explaining this general concept. And this is what fundamentally distinguishes it from an inanimate object, is the action that it's taking. Because, for example, let's think about a plant versus a rock. On one hand, you have a plant. A plant will, for example, if it's put in a corner away from the sun, it'll grow towards the sun. It'll move itself and turn itself towards the sun. This is self-generated action for the purpose of achieving a goal of self-sustenance, the achievement of a value in this context. While a rock, it simply does whatever. You can push a rock, it'll do exactly what you'd expect to do as a rock. It doesn't have any sort of self-generated, goal-directed action. So that's fundamentally what distinguishes between the two. For example, a plant will, going back to the plant versus rock example, if you put a plant in one corner of the room, it'll grow towards the sun, towards the window. If you put it in the other corner of the room, it'll still grow towards the window, even if that's in the opposite direction. However, if you take a rock and push it to the, let's see, with the mirroring, that'd be to the left in this context, for the viewers. If you push the rock to the left, then you see it. It's going to move to the left. If it starts in the other corner and you push it to the left, it's still going to move to the left. It's the same thing every single time. However, for the plant, it's always directed towards this general goal. It's directed to a goal of its own survival. So this is a really important aspect. This is what it means fundamentally to be alive. It means to be able to take those sort of actions. So let's think about this now. Now that we've understood how this applies to life in general, let's think about this in the context of man in particular. What is the difference between man and like a lower life form, like a plant or an animal or those sort of things? Well, we can see that both have goal-directed action. However, we notice that man's values do not come automatically to him. You don't automatically get food. You don't automatically know what you need to eat. An animal, for example, will just automatically follow their instincts and they'll see like a fish in the water and they'll go follow their instincts, go grab the fish. A plant will automatically just set its roots in the ground. These are automatically attained values. Now, for an animal, he still has to go out and go get his food, but his code of values is set for him. However, for man, this is not the case. Man does not have this predetermined set of values. It doesn't know what necessarily needs to eat. A man, for example, when I say I'm hungry, for example, I can't just go outside and eat whatever I feel like eating. This is what an animal would do. But for me, I have to think, okay, I have to identify what is the specific thing that I want to eat. Let's say there's some berries growing on a tree somewhere. What is this thing? Are these poisonous? What is can I eat these? And then I have to integrate it with the context of my values. I have to think about, if I eat these things, is it going to prolong my life or is it going to kill me? So using this process of identification and integration, I can understand what sort of values I should pursue, what I need to do in this context. So from there, I have this general understanding that I need to use this process of identification and integration to understand what I need to do in the world, to define my values and figure out a way to achieve them. Now, this process is reason. Rand defines Let me actually look up the definition. Let's see if I can find it quick. I know she defines it as integration and identification. Here it is. Reason is the faculty that identifies and integrates the material provided by man's senses. So this is fundamentally what reason is. This is man's means of survival. This is how man survives. This is how he determines his values and how he achieves them. So this is important. What is this process of reason? It's a process of thinking. It's a process of thinking about what this thing is and how it integrates with my values. So thinking is essentially the action of living in man's context. It is the action that is, it's a self-generated action. You must choose to focus. You must choose to think. So it's self-generated, and it's goal-directed. Its purpose, the purpose of thinking, is to basically achieve your values, to find in the context of food, is to find the right foods to eat. Or in the context of shelter, it'd be like constructing your own shelter or finding the proper cave to go into. Now this is another interesting example, the shelter example, because in a human, you can't just go wherever you feel like. You don't just go into a cave. There might be bats in there. There might be an animal that kills you. You have to come up. You have to identify what the nature of a certain shelter is, and go forward from there and decide. Okay, am I going to go into the go into the shelter? Is it going to integrate well with my values, or is this going to kill me? Is there going to be an animal that comes in and consumes me? So essentially, here, the fundamental nature of what it means for a man to survive, it is to think. This is what life as a human being is. It is thinking. This is what that action is. And one interesting formulation that Rand has is she basically explains that psychologically, to think is to focus, and to focus is to be conscious, and to be conscious is to be alive. So in a metaphysical sense, as long as you are thinking, you are alive. And when that thinking ceases, when that action ceases, that this goal-directed, self-generated action, when that ceases, that's when you die. So this is fundamentally important here. This concept of man's life as being thought, as being thinking. This is really important here. And you can essentially, in a way, think about life as a range based off of one's level of focus or amount of thinking. This might not be perfectly applied because this is sort of my own integration. I want to be clear on that. So if this doesn't help you, or if this contradicts in any way, please comment below and I will issue a correction in the description or something. However, this is sort of my formulation, and I think it makes sense based off of what I understand from reading The Virtue of Selfishness, that you can think of life as this basically a range based off of how focused you are. When you are in extreme focus, this is the ultimate sort of understanding of living as a man. And when you have absolutely no focus, when you're completely unconscious, that's essentially when you're dead. Then you are dead. So thinking about life like this ultimately gets us to the point of this video. This is where I was leading up to. Applying this to the context of force, thinking about it in regards to politics and the use of force. So when one uses force on another person, he essentially tells that person, you cannot take that action. This is the action that I'm going to make you take. For example, you have taxation. You're not allowed to spend your money on this thing that you want. We're going to divert it and direct it towards the public good. Or another example would be like forcing someone to choose one career instead of another. You're saying, no, you're not allowed to make this decision. We're making this decision for you. You're forced to do this specific career. And I think this was pretty common in like Soviet Russia, for example, when it's like, okay, you do the thing that is that's going to be more beneficial to the public good and more beneficial to the proletariat. So this actually makes man's mind inapplicable to his life and essentially stifles it. In these contexts, you can't think about what decision am I going to actually make. That decision's already decided for you. So there's no real point in thinking about it. Like, let's think, for example, back to the job example. If I want to choose between being, I guess in my own life, my decision that I'm thinking about is between being an actuary or a math professor. So this is a specific thing that I'm thinking about quite a bit. So I need to ultimately make that decision. And that leads to me thinking about all these different pros and cons of each side and deciding where I want to direct my life, which is more in line with my values. However, ultimately, if someone said, no, you have to be an actuary, or no, you have to be a math professor, well, there would be no point in thinking about that anymore. I just, okay, shut off my mind, do what the Force tells me to do. And if I do continue thinking about it, if I do think, okay, let's say they force me to be an actuary, for example. But actually, I feel like math would actually be more helpful to my values, and you ultimately continue thinking about it, well, your thought becomes completely disconnected from reality. You can never act on that thought. You can never implement that thought into reality. And this essentially makes the action of your thought pointless, and it just completely disconnects it from life, and that'll essentially demotivate you from continually pursuing the goal. And this action of thought ceases to be goal-directed, and it ceases to be self-sustaining. Now, this, in a very quite literal sense, it doesn't directly kill you that moment, but on the range that we were talking about earlier, this range of thinking, it moves you towards death. It makes it so that you are less alive than before. You're less conscious. It's literally in the fact that you are quite literally thinking less about things. And through force, you are thinking less about the world. You're in a less focused state. You're in a less conscious state. And this is actually quite a bit closer towards death than a state in which you are allowed to make your own decisions. So this is fundamentally how force stifles the mind. You're still surviving in a sense, but you're not really surviving. You're not surviving as a human being, and that's the only sense in which you can survive. You are a human being. There is no disconnected survival apart from the kind of being that you're surviving as. That would be a rationalistic, floating abstraction regarding life. This idea that there's this life apart from living as a human being. This is the only way that we can live, by using our thought, by being more conscious, by focusing on reality. So fundamentally, this is when someone uses force on you, they are stifling your mind. They're stifling your thought and essentially killing you. It is inconsistent with human life. This goes back to the title of my video, How Force Stifles Human Life. This is the sense in which force does stifle human life, and this is ultimately why we instituted government, to eliminate force from society through protecting our own individual rights. So yeah, it's not because of some non-aggression, this floating non-aggression principle, or God bestowing each individual with intrinsic worth. Those are just arbitrary justifications that make a subjectivist dismissal of individual rights seem like it makes a lot more sense. But the issue is this doesn't make the subjectivist dismissal of individual rights on the grounds that sort of force doesn't actually hurt anybody, that using force can be good if it's directed properly. This doesn't actually make sense in the context of human life. When you actually think about what is the nature of human life, the nature of human life, as I've explained, is thought. So, and when you use force, that stifles thought, which ultimately stifles human life and makes living as a human being impossible. So understanding this is a really, really important concept when it comes to better understanding the objectivist ethics and better understanding how necessary it is to have ethics to lead into politics. You can't do what libertarians do, which is just have this non-aggression principle that they deduce everything from. No, you have to understand force is bad because of our nature as human beings, because it's because of our metaphysical nature as human beings, because of what it means to be alive as a human being. So yeah, that's essentially it for what I wanted to say in this video. Now, if you want to better understand this, I'm not the one that you want to learn this from. If you want to better understand these concepts, one, I'd recommend joining the OAC. This is where joining the OAC has taught me so much about this general concept and really changed a lot of my views on what Rand actually means when she talks about life qua man. That it's helped me quite a bit, I think, in that regard. Just based off listening to what the intellectuals have to say about it and how they clarify this issue. And also it motivates me a lot more to go and read this stuff. So that'd be one thing. Go learn from the intellectuals themselves by joining the OAC. And another thing, if you want to read further on this topic and better understand it with this in mind, I'd recommend Virtue of Selfishness, Chapter 1, The Objectivist Ethics. Most of you guys have probably read it. But thinking with this concept in mind, this concept of human life as being an action, being the action of thinking, I think that can be really helpful. So especially focus on, I guess this is the 50th anniversary edition. It'd be page 16 to page 27, which is basically starts from where Rand defines value and goes up until the point where she says man's life is the standard and his own life is the purpose. That's the section that I'm mostly focusing on in this video. And then another book that I recommend that most of you guys have already heard of is Objectivism: The Philosophy of Ayn Rand. And the chapter that I was mainly focusing on in this particular video was the initiation of physical force as evil. It'd be in, I believe it's in. Let me look at the table of contents. But if you want to learn more about this topic and learn it from people who know more what they're talking about than me, I'd recommend looking at it's chapter 8, virtue. The last section in chapter 8, the initiation of physical force is evil, page 310. That's where I got sort of the career. That's where I got the career example from when I was thinking about this topic. So those are the two things I recommend. The chapter in Opar on the initiation of force is evil, and virtue of selfishness, the objectivist ethics, especially pages 16 where she defines value up until page 27 with man's life as the standard and his own life as the purpose. And also, if you have anything else that you recommend or have any corrections that you want to make of anything that I've said here, please comment below. I really want to hear more good books that you guys recommend, more if you have any courses that you'd recommend that discusses this particular topic, go comment that in the comments below. We want to make this comment section a nice, happy, intellectual, extremely helpful place. That's the goal here. I think using the comment section in that way ultimately will lead to a lot of positivity, I guess. I don't know. I'm losing the word that I wanted to say there. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, I'm hoping to make more content like this where I outline something, go through, explain in a lot of detail, providing lots of examples, and then ultimately recommend the books where I sort of got a lot of these ideas from, or the courses as well. So yeah, if you like this, go support me on Patreon. Trade some value for value here. This is fun for me in general, so I don't necessarily need any Patreon support, but I would really appreciate it. It does help motivate me a lot with this. And also go subscribe down below. I'm hoping to end up putting out a lot more content coming up. I really like these type of just scripted, sort of off the cuff videos, more just extemporaneous. But yeah, these are really fun for me, so I'm hoping to do a lot more of this. And thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Peace!